welcome back to another episode of Cohiba Bay. Let's cut to the chase. We're bleeding money, and this episode is about figuring out a way to rectify that. In our last episode, we doubled our population, which you would think would be great for adding to our tax base, and you'd normally be right. But when you build two separate elementary schools and a high school with a population of a little over 4,000, things can go south quickly. So let's jump in and try to start making some more money. First step I'm taking is to expand out our farmlands on the outskirts of town. Farms provide raw resources that can either be sold to industrial buildings in the region or exported. And given where our city is in terms of size, skill, and financial health, I think this is a good solution to help get us back into the green. Just unlocked the Dairy House signature building, which is the first industrial signature building that we've unlocked so far. The Dairy House is free to place and provides a 2% boost to industrial efficiency and export profits citywide. I'm not saying we hit the lottery or anything, but we'll take any boost we can get right now. We need to place this down soon. For this plot of land, I did something a little different. I dragged a dirt road through it and placed patches of trees instead of leaving the standard crop surface. This farm produces meat, so I wanted to create a little cow pasture. I even placed a few cow spawners. If you've ever driven down I-75 through rural central Florida, chances are you've seen a cow or two grazing on grass as you pass by. Well, that was peaceful, but back to the task at hand. Now that we've expanded the farmlands, I want to focus our attention on another raw resource, rocks. I'm building a new industrial area that will primarily focus on aggregate mining, but will also feature some generic industry and office space. The focal point of this area will be a large aggregate mine though. Aggregate mining allows for materials like sand, gravel, and stone to be extracted from the earth. These materials can then be used for construction and other infrastructure like roads and bridges. To be honest, I'm not sure how aggregate mines even work in City Skylines 2, but I imagine it functions similarly to farms, where the resources are either used by local industry or exported. Either way, it can't hurt to build one of these. Next to our aggregate mine, we're creating a little industrial district with generic industry and some office space. I'm hoping that these buildings will use resources from some of our specialized industry additions so that we can start to establish a localized supply chain. expanding our farms and adding some additional industry, I thought this would be enough for us to start turning a profit, but somehow we're losing more money than when we started. I know that once this city gets off the ground, money won't be an issue, but it's been tough sledding in the beginning stages of this region, I gotta say. To prevent bankruptcy, I quickly raised taxes, reduced the budget for services, and raised service fees again. I also remembered that we previously unlocked the dairy farm signature building, which if you recall, is free to build and provides a 2% boost to industrial efficiency and profits. Let's go ahead and build that before I forget again. For some reason in my head, I assumed that building this dairy house would take a lot longer than it did, but it was simple as just plopping it down. So here we are. It's built. Let's let the simulation run for a second and see if it makes an improvement to our budget. We are technically making money, but barely. About $500 profit an hour. And if you've been following along, you know that this likely won't last long. But we gotta keep chipping away and try to find revenue streams for the city. We have our future port where we've already laid out some industry. I think it makes sense to continue expanding our industry here, especially for once we have the money to build a cargo harbor. These factories will have easy access to a port where they can ship out excess goods. Before I just zone out some industry, I think we should take a look at this area and try to plan for the future. Currently, we only have one road leading into our industrial sector, and I could see this creating traffic backups down the road. For planning purposes, I want to create another road connection in and out of the sector. We have all of this undeveloped land north of our future port that I think will be a prime location for future development. Let's start laying out the beginnings of a road network, and then we'll extend it down into our industrial district. For our new road network, I'm starting in downtown and upgrading Brook Street into a 4-lane avenue. This avenue will function as a thoroughfare and provide a closer connection to our future port. Now we're going to do a little bit of terraforming and expand this area of land. I'm creating a channel with a quay wall to the left and wetlands to the right. This will give us more space for our new road network, create more developable land, but I also think it just looks nicer. With our road network placed, it's time to start expanding our factories. I'm starting by expanding the aggregate mine here. Next, I'm zoning out a basic grid and trying out some of the new parking lot roads that were introduced in the latest detailers patch. These parking lot roads are awesome new zonable networks that come with functional parking included, and I think they really enhance our ability to quickly create realistic parking. These new parking lot roads are awesome. Another feature of these roads is that it automatically removes parking spaces in front of building entrances. This is definitely a cool feature, but can look a bit awkward having these random empty spaces of asphalt. I'm playing around with some custom services here, just to make these empty spaces feel a little bit more realistic. I found that this basic concrete surface from Sully works pretty well here. It isn't perfect from up close, but looks pretty good when zoomed out. Speaking of which, this industrial area doesn't really look good from close up or zoomed out, so let's spend some time detailing this up a bit. Alright, so a bit of good news and a bit of bad news. Good news is our industrial area looks a lot better. Bad news is we have $13,000 left, and we're still losing money, so I had to pause the game. I gotta ask, am I really this bad at the game? Either way, we're marching forward. One thing that might help is to add some more housing. I want to add a little neighborhood close by. Normally I'd be opposed to adding residential so close to pollution, but I wanted to take some inspiration from this neighborhood of Tampa called Palmetto Beach. This little neighborhood is right across the street from a petroleum facility and right next to major industry. It's a pretty interesting neighborhood because on one hand, it's in the middle of what would normally be an undesirable area, but on the other hand, it's right on the bay and has some pretty nice views. Let's create our little version of this and try not to go bankrupt in the process. Remember when I said let's try not to go bankrupt? Well, we got pretty close here. While adding some trees to our new neighborhood, I forgot that trees cost money to place, and we ran out of money. Knowing that I had little recourse at this point, I decided to leave it up to chance and unpause the game. By the grace of all things holy, our margins turned positive, and as a matter of fact, we're up to over $1,000 an hour. To prevent landscaping myself into bankruptcy again, I think it's best I take a step back. I mean, so far we've expanded our industrial, we've added some more homes, and it's not like we've added any additional services that would increase our expenditures. I'm gonna let the simulation run for a while. Let's see if this surplus is here to stay, and if we can get our bank account back up to a healthy level. Letting the simulation run for about 15 in-game days, we're back to losing money, and I think it's clear that this problem is not going to go away by keeping to our same practices. I've been thinking about the root cause of these money issues, and I think the main problem is that I just haven't put the city in a situation that allows it to succeed. First of all, our taxes are too high, which doesn't allow for companies to make as much profit or for our citizens to have extra money to spend. Second, we're still lacking in some major services, mainly because we haven't had the money to provide them. We still have no garbage collection, and when garbage piles up, it makes citizens sick, which causes them to miss work, which in turn causes companies to be inefficient. Which leads me to another issue, healthcare coverage. It's lacking, so if citizens do get sick, a lot of them won't get treatment and they'll die. That's not ideal. Our roads are in poor condition, which can lead to slower commute times and more frequent accidents. And finally, we have no mail coverage or internet service, which not only affects citizens' happiness, but also hurts companies' profits as they can't send crucial communications or fulfill online orders. It's time to get serious about fixing these money issues once and for all, and it starts with giving our city what it needs to function, regardless of the upfront cost. This is going to be a bold multi-step process, and to fund it, we're going to have to take out our first loan. You gotta be careful with taking out loans because the more money you borrow, the higher the interest rate. I settled on a $750,000 loan with an 8.1% interest rate, which is definitely gonna tank our monthly income, but it's a price I'm willing to pay to shore up our service shortcomings. With our newfound wealth, I decided to zone some more residential buyer downtown. This will all be redeveloped eventually, so I kept it bare bones, and it's functioning solely for the financial benefit. Now it's time to start our service expansion. First up is a road maintenance depot. Garbage collection comes next, I'm placing a large landfill here at the mouth of this river. Let's address healthcare next. I'm replacing our small health clinic with a normal sized one. This will provide 2 more ambulances and 75 more patient capacity, which should greatly expand our service coverage. Next, I'm going to lay out the beginnings of a brand new district to offset some of these new service costs. I'll talk a little more in depth about this district later on, if we can manage to stave off bankruptcy. But in the meantime, I'm just laying some roads, zoning some residential, and placing a few buildings to lay the groundwork, and bring in a little extra tax revenue. Before we press play, there's a couple other items we need to address. First is internet service. Internet service is important to the real world, and it's also important to the Sims in our virtual world. I'm placing a few telecom antennas throughout Cohiba. I did my best to ensure that every area has good coverage, but there are definitely a few areas with spotty coverage. What can you do? 2 bars of service is better than no bars. Now we're placing our very first post office, so that our Sims can get all of their Amazon deliveries before Christmas. I made sure to not only add a post office, but to ensure that the city has adequate mailboxes placed throughout the area. Unlike telecom antennas, mailboxes are cheap to place with a price of only $100 per mailbox, so I made sure that every area of development on the map had coverage. With telecom and our post office established, it's now time for the moment of truth. What happens when we press play? I'm not gonna lie, things got off to a pretty rough start, as expected. Our monthly income immediately dropped to negative $13,000, but with the scale of changes we made, we gotta give it more time for the changes to start taking effect. As new residents moved in and service additions took shape, our monthly income improved slightly, but we were still losing money at a decent rate. I played around with the budget panel by reducing the amount we spend on services and increasing taxes to see if we could find some sort of equilibrium. This process continued for a while, until the budget finally improved to a positive monthly balance. As has been the theme of this episode, this budget surplus did not last though, and I quickly went back to losing over $1,000 an hour. As the thought of the city's impending financial doom loomed overhead, I quickly started thinking of ideas to save the ship from sinking. My first idea was to delete all of the parking lot assets we placed, since each lot has an upkeep cost, and they really weren't getting much use. In the process, I found another issue that was costing us money. There were a bunch of these hidden assets scattered throughout the city that evidently served no purpose and were costing us thousands of dollars a month. I'm not sure if these were the result of a mod malfunctioning or what, but going through the city and removing these was a lot of fun. For several in-game days, the budget kept fluctuating, from making money, to losing money, to making money. In the process, we hit the big town milestone, which granted us with $200,000 in more spending money, which immediately went to paying down our loan so that we could decrease our interest rate. We were now making consistent money, but I noticed that our newly placed landfill was already full due to all the garbage that had accumulated prior to us placing it. I thought, no problem, let's just import city services. Yeah, that's not going to work for us. I made the tough decision to significantly expand our landfill, which will make it so that garbage isn't a problem for a little while, but will essentially make the surrounding land undevelopable for several in-game years. Fast forwarding a few in-game days, we were back to losing money. We were almost bankrupt again, so I had no choice but to borrow more money. At this point, I was almost out of ideas to make this city profitable, but I did have one more last-ditch idea, which, spoiler alert, finally solved our money problems. The funny thing was, it was such a simple idea. I just lowered taxes. We were previously taxing residential, industrial, and offices up to 14%, so I decided to lower taxes to about 9% across the board, so that citizens and businesses could keep their extra profits instead of donating it to Uncle Sam. At first, we naturally were losing a lot of money, but as the region started accumulating more wealth for themselves, we finally started to see a monthly profit that seemed sustainable. I paid back some of our loans, and our surplus has grown to $2,500 a month, and it's still growing. This time, it just feels different. It's like that first day of summer vacation, where you wake up and just know it's going to be a great day. It's a great day in Cohiba Bay. As I promised earlier, if we manage not to go bankrupt, talk a little bit about the new district we created. Our new district is based on Ybor City. It's a neighborhood in Tampa that has a rich history and lots of Cuban influence. Ybor City was founded in the late 1800s by Vicente Martinez Ybor, a major cigar manufacturer who helped transform the area from an isolated village into the cigar capital of the entire world. This is why Tampa is often referred to as Cigar City, and it's also where the name of our region, Cohiba Bay, comes from. Today, Ybor City is a National Historic Landmark District, but it also features plenty of great restaurants, shops, and it also has a pretty fun nightlife scene. Now that we're making money sustainably, let's start working on this district and start to turn it into our own bustling version of Ybor. I'd say the beginnings of this district turned out pretty well. especially given the fact that there aren't really any custom assets on Paradox mods yet. But with the new region packs, the latest additions from the Detailers patch, and the staples, such as custom surfaces and decals, I feel like we were able to capture the general feel of eBoard pretty well. Not to mention, we're making boatloads of money now. We're sitting at over $500,000, making over $11,000 an hour, and our Sims are actually happy. Who would have thought that the solution was as simple as lowering taxes and providing basic services? It's been a roller coaster of an episode, especially if you were to look at our financials on a chart, but it's been fun solving the budget issues, and it feels great to finally have some semblance of financial health. I'm not sure what we'll accomplish in the next episode, but I definitely have some ideas. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching this one, and I hope to see you in the next one. See ya!